I'm going to be showing you how to take a spoken audio recording. In my example, I'll be using an audio sermon that was recorded on a CD and edit that recording on your computer using free software so that you can optimize that recording for posting to a website. This is sometimes referred to as audio mastering engineering. In the video description, I have listed an outline of each topic that will be covered with the times of this video. You can simply skip to the part of the video that you need to watch if you don't need to watch the entire thing. The software we're going to be using will be Apple's iTunes, Audacity, and Chris's dynamic compressor plugin for Audacity. The links to each of these are in the video description below. I'd like to cover a few technical details first. This video is focused on spoken audio recordings and not music CDs. We are going to want the spoken audio recording on our computer in either a lossless WAV file or as close to CD quality or better file. If your audio recording is not at CD quality, or let's say you have a compressed MP3 quality file, then when you perform editing on that recording, your recording may not sound very good. You really want to be starting with at least a CD quality recording, such as a WAV file. All of our audio mastering is going to be done using Audacity. I am not a professional audio mastering engineer. I have simply learned several tricks from experience over the years that I plan to show you how to use with Audacity so that you can end up with a better sounding spoken audio recording when you are done. Finally, we will take our mastered audio recording and using iTunes, we will perform a final file size compression so that your file is ready to be posted on a website and listened to by anyone around the world. To import a CD into your computer for audio editing, you will need to open up iTunes and put your CD into your computer. When iTunes first asks you, would you like to import the CD into your iTunes library, select No for right now so we can make sure everything is titled correctly and that we are using the correct import settings. I will let you know when it's best to pause this video to look at information, but right now, if you start by clicking CD Info, you can edit the artist and album fields for the whole CD, and then you only have to edit the names of the tracks. If you are typing in a title for the recording name, such as a sermon title, you can use the website Title Case. I specifically like to use the AP-style title case to help avoid typos in capitalization. In this example, for some reason our CD recorder split the Sunday morning sermon into 2 tracks. We will combine these into one track later using Audacity, but right now you will see I simply labeled the 2 track names with an A and a B at the end of their names. If you want to copy my format, you can go ahead and pause the video now. Once you have everything titled how you want it, go ahead and click on Import CD. When you click on Import CD, you will most likely see what I have on my screen. These settings may be okay for a music CD that you are not going to edit. We, of course, are editing, so go ahead and change AAC encoder to WAV encoder, and go ahead and check Use Error Correction when reading CDs. Then click OK. Once imported, you will want to click on Music, and then you can click on Artists, and scroll down to the name of the speaker you just imported. You can then right-click on the file name and tell iTunes to Show in Windows Explorer. You will then see a window pop up with your imported files in it. The first thing you will want to do is copy these files into a separate file location. Now, I like to match the file name to the track name, so I will go back to iTunes and copy the track name of each file and correct my file name. We are now ready to import these files into Audacity for audio mastering. I'm now going to show you how to do some simple editing to your audio recording using Audacity. As I have stated earlier, you will want to do this with at least a CD quality recording if possible. This will help you have a more professional sounding audio recording when you are done. Also, you will need to download and install both Audacity and Chris's Dynamic Compressor plugin for Audacity, the links of which are both in the video description, before you begin following my example. The instructions for installing these programs onto your computer are on these websites, so you will want to do that now if you have not already done so. Once you have Audacity ready and running, you will import the audio recording you want to edit by clicking on File, Import Audio. You will then navigate to the folder where you have stored your audio files, and you will select the one you want to edit. In my example, the recording I want to edit is actually split into 2 tracks, so I will select both of them so that I can combine them. Once you click Open, you will then see another screen asking you how you want to import your tracks. I generally select Read the files directly from the original because I am already working on a copy of my audio recording. You will then click OK. As you can see, I now have 2 tracks, and the first thing I want to do is combine them into 1 track. Now, at first, it may seem as though it's as simple as copying the second track to the end of the first track, and it is almost that simple. However, if you only do that, the zero crossings of the 2 tracks may not be lined up. So we actually have to select the entire track and find the 0 crossings. If you go to Edit and scroll down to Find 0 crossings, you can also see the keyboard shortcut for this is Z. If you do that, and then you copy the second track, then you can highlight the first track, and you can find the 0 crossings again, and then you can go to the end of the track using the right arrow key, and then you can paste. And now that you've done this, you can get rid of the second track, and you are ready to edit your audio recording. In my example, we have several different speakers who talk one after the other, and often an awkward gap is created in between the speakers. The first thing I will do is eliminate a lot of these gaps between the speakers. At our congregation, we typically record the scripture reading, the sermon, and the song following the sermon, so I generally only have to delete gaps in between those places to make the final result sound more natural and less awkward. You can zoom into a specific part of the track by clicking where you want to zoom in and pressing Ctrl 1. That will zoom in. Ctrl 3 will zoom you out. If you press Ctrl E, it should select your entire track. Let's start by removing one of these awkward gaps. Simply highlight what you want to remove, and then press Delete. Whenever you make simple changes like this, you just want to make sure that the transition between the 2 speakers feels natural and normal. If you press the spacebar, that will toggle starting and stopping the playback of the track in Audacity. If you find you've accidentally deleted too much, you can always press Ctrl Z to undo what you just did. I use Ctrl Z quite a lot myself. I will finish deleting any empty space in the recording now.
And who is my neighbor? And who is my neighbor?
My privilege.
And who is my neighbor?
My privilege.
And who is my neighbor?
My privilege to be able to stand.
Scripture reading. verses 25 through 29. And behold, a certain
this morning as together while we stand, while we sing, won't you come? This morning as together while we stand, while we sing, won't you come? This morning as together while we stand, while we sing, won't you come?
What can wash away?
Once you have finished eliminating any empty space between speakers, it can be nice to add an equalization effect to help eliminate any room noise, as well as boost vocals if there is any singing. You will want to select the entire track, and then click on Effect, Equalization. Now, I'm going to show you how to get this type of curve. Most likely you will see a flat line. The first thing you'll want to do is go ahead and select Draw, and right around 100 Hz at 0 dB, anywhere between 100 Hz and 80 Hz at 0 dB, you can go ahead and place a first marker. And then, down at about 40 Hz, down as low as it'll show you here, go ahead and click again, and Audacity will go ahead and curve that off, and you'll have a nice high-pass filter. Next, you're going to want to click on Graphic, and then at about 5 kilohertz, go ahead and boost that up by about 6 dB. And then for 6 kilohertz, boost that up as well, about right there. And then you can go ahead and click OK. And it will apply the equalization. Once you have done this once, if you go to edit another track and you want to apply the same equalization, you won't have to enter that curve a second time. You will now want to make sure the entire track has a nice, consistent, loud volume. That way, your finished audio recording will be much more user-friendly, as you will not have to turn the volume way up just to hear the speaker, and each speaker will be at about the same volume, so you will not have to constantly adjust the volume as you are listening to the recording. This type of editing is called dynamics compression. To do this, we will use Chris's dynamic compressor plugin for Audacity. You will want to select the entire track, then click on Effect, and Compress Dynamics 1.2.6. You will then see a bunch of sliders that you can adjust. I have found the settings that I have here to work very well for our congregation's needs, and if you want to use these settings, go ahead and pause the video. You can then click OK, and it will do its thing. You will now see that everything is all the same amplitude. If you listen to it, you will hear that it is much louder than it was before. Also, you may notice that since everything is the same amplitude, you can no longer easily find the transitions between the speakers just by looking at the track. Because of that, and a few other reasons, you want this step to be the last step you perform when you are editing your audio recordings. Now that your audio is all set, you can highlight the track and select File, Export Selected Audio. I then make sure the file type selected is an AIFF file. This is essentially Apple's version of a WAV file, so we are still at CD quality here. I do this because I started by importing the audio CD into iTunes as a WAV file, and the final file size compression I want to do with iTunes as well, because it gives a better result than Audacity's file size compressor. So I will export from Audacity using AIFF to avoid any confusion with the WAV file that is already in iTunes. Also, you can add album artwork to an AIFF file, but you cannot add album artwork to a WAV file. Now, the final file size compression is different than the dynamics compression that we just did. You will want to make sure your file name is correct, so I will remove the A at the end of my example. I'll make sure there's no track number at the beginning. And since I liked my track name to match my file name, I will highlight my file name and copy it. And before you click save, make sure the file location is where you want it. Then go ahead and click save. Next, the metadata will pop up. And you can fill it in as you like. Once you've done this once, you can click set default. And then the next time you're in here, these parameters will already be set this way. You can then click OK. And it will save your file in the location that you specified. Now that you have a master file of your spoken audio recording, you will want to prepare it to be distributed on a website. Although your recording sounds very good now, if the length of your recording is about 40 minutes long, then the file size is probably around 400 megabytes, which is not quite half a gig. Let's say, for example, there is somebody who is using a cell phone with a data plan to listen to your recording from your website. They will not appreciate having to use half a gig of their data plan just to listen to your one audio recording. Therefore, we are going to convert our CD quality file down to an MP3 file, which will create a much smaller file size and will still sound like the same quality to most people. Also, we will add album artwork to the file, and you can perform any final customizations to the metadata that you like. You will now take your master audio recording and drop it into iTunes. Since my master audio recording is an AIFF file, I am going to add album artwork to it now. If your master audio recording does not allow album artwork to be added, such as if your master recording is a WAV file, then you can add album artwork after you have compressed your file to an MP3. I will right-click on the file in iTunes, select Song Info. I'll check to make sure it's my AIFF file. It is my AIFF file. I will now click on Artwork, and then Add Artwork. And you go to the correct file location. And my artwork is actually a PNG file, so I will select Show All File Types. And then you can either double-click or select your file and click Open. Now, we will want to compress the master recording into an MP3 file. You can do this by clicking on Edit, and Preferences, and then Import Settings, and change the WAV encoder to MP3 encoder. When you first do this, you may see something similar to what I have on my screen. This may be fine for a music CD, but since we have primarily spoken audio, we can actually compress the file size even more than this. So if you click the setting drop-down and click on Custom, I have found that these settings work very well for my congregation's needs. If you'd like to copy these settings, you can go ahead and pause the video now. Once you have these settings, you can then click on OK. Now, you may notice in the details that it says 64 kilobits per second, and you might think, wait, I set it to 128 kilobits per second. But the 128 kilobits per second was stereo, and we have selected mono. By selecting mono, we can cut the file size in half. I have messed around with some of the AAC encoder settings. Spoken podcast, that always seems to change the way my speakers sound, so I don't use that. I've also looked at this custom setting, and this setting has worked, but every once in a while I will still be able to hear a difference in the way my speaker sounds. You may, of course, try these AAC encoder settings and compare them to the MP3 encoder settings and use whichever one you prefer. So you can then click on OK and OK, and you are ready to create your MP3 version. So make sure your master file is selected. You can always look at the song info, make sure it's the right file type. Then if you go to File, Convert, Create MP3 version, it will create the MP3 version of your file. Directly below your master recording should be an MP3 file of your recording. look at its song info, verify it is an MP3, and notice how much smaller the file size is. Now it is only about 20 megabytes, much better than our previous 400 megabytes. You may of course listen to this file to make sure it sounds good. One final change I will make to the metadata of our congregation's files is to select album as a compilation of songs by various artists. Since we have multiple preachers at our congregation, if someone were to download these MP3 files from our website and into their own iTunes, we would want them all to show up in the same place in their iTunes instead of separated by the person who was speaking at the time. So, with that checked, I can now press OK, and we are ready for the final step. Right-click on your MP3 and select Show in Windows Explorer. Now, you can copy that file and paste it into a file location dedicated for your website. Since I like to have my track name and my file name be the same, I will go ahead and fix that. Finally, one thing I have learned is that sometimes, after I provide the file to the group who posts it to our website, all the metadata I put into the file would somehow get stripped away. One trick I have learned that prevents that from happening is to right-click on the file in Windows Explorer, click Properties, and then make sure this read-only attribute is checked. Click Apply, and then click OK. Doing that seems to prevent the metadata from being cast aside. Now your recording is ready to be put on a website for others to enjoy. I hope you have found this video useful.